Picture this, the year is 1529. Autumn winds carry the sound of war drums across the plains of Europe. An empire of 100,000 warriors is marching westward, their cannons tearing through the earth, their black banners blocking out the sun. They've already demolished entire kingdoms, reduced proud cities to ash, and shattered every army foolish enough to stand in their way. And now they're heading straight for Vienna. If this one city crumbles, Germany vanishes. Italy falls. The Europe you know today, it never exists. But inside those ancient walls, ordinary people, farmers, blacksmiths, soldiers, are preparing to face the unthinkable. What happens next will echo through history forever. Let me take you back to where it all began. Our story doesn't start with glory, it starts with tragedy. 3 years before Vienna, in the summer of 1526, two massive forces collided on the flatlands of Hungary near a forgotten town called Mohacs. On one side, the Hungarian kingdom, noble knights draped in gleaming steel, religious banners held high, convinced that divine power would shield them from harm. On the other, the Ottoman war machine. Soldiers forged from childhood into perfect instruments of conquest. Obedience was their creed, victory was their religion. The clash lasted barely 2 hours. When the rain started falling, it was already finished. The Hungarian army, obliterated, scattered, drowned in the swamps along the Danube. Their king, Louis II, just 20 years old, perished trying to escape across a swollen river. Days later, they found his crown floating in the muck. That single afternoon changed everything. Hungary ceased to be, and a massive door into the heart of Europe had been violently kicked open. From the east, the Ottoman Empire surged forward like an unstoppable flood. At its helm stood Suleiman the Magnificent, young, brilliant, already a legend. He'd seized Belgrade, the fortress city that now sits as Serbia's capital. He'd crushed the Knights of Rhodes on their island stronghold. His empire now stretched from Arabian deserts to Balkan mountains. But to Suleiman, Vienna wasn't just another city on a map. It was the prize. The gateway between continents, the threshold between Islam and Christendom, between two worlds. If Vienna fell, the rest of Europe would topple like dominoes. Destiny, he believed, was calling his name, so he began to prepare. Across Western Europe, terror spread like wildfire. The Habsburg dynasty, Austria's ruling family, saw the storm clouds gathering. Emperor Charles V controlled lands from Spain to the Americas, but he was too far away to help. In Vienna, his brother Ferdinand faced an impossible mission: defend the city with almost nothing. Desperate letters flew between capitals, sealed with wax and dread. Some begged for troops, others for gold, many simply asked for prayers. Priests warned their congregations that the end times were near. Nobles whispered apocalyptic prophecies. Merchants packed their valuables and fled westward. For the first time in centuries, it felt like Christendom itself might actually collapse. Meanwhile, across the Bosphorus in Istanbul, the forges blazed day and night. Massive cannons were cast, horses were prepared, mountains of grain were stockpiled, and the army assembled a force that seemed infinite. 60,000 Janissaries, the Sultan's white-uniformed elite warriors. 50,000 Sipahi cavalry, armored riders feared across 3 continents. Behind them marched engineers, diggers, cooks, craftsmen, a mobile metropolis of over 100,000 souls. Even the Sultan's personal gardeners and servants joined the march. Because when the Ottomans went to war, they brought their entire civilization with them. And when winter's ice finally melted in the spring of 1529, Suleiman gave the command. War drums thundered through Istanbul's streets. The colossal army began its northward march across the Balkans. Their target was clear, their mission was simple. They were coming for Vienna. When the Ottoman forces departed that spring, the ground was still soft from melted snow. From Istanbul, the columns stretched for miles, armor flashing, banners snapping in the bitter wind, war drums pounding a rhythm of conquest through mountain valleys. This wasn't just an army, it was a moving civilization. Blacksmiths, cooks, engineers, merchants, musicians, even entire families followed behind the soldiers. Each unit carried its own provisions because Suleiman understood something crucial. To conquer Europe, you needed more than weapons, you needed organization. But nature had other plans. Spring rains transformed roads into rivers of sludge. Supply wagons sank up to their wheels. Oxen drowned trying to drag the massive bronze cannons through flooded lowlands. Men slipped, fell, and disappeared into the bog. By the time they crossed the Balkans, hundreds of horses lay dead, and many of those legendary cannons had to be abandoned in the swamps. Still, they pressed forward, through Bulgaria, into Hungary. They moved like a dark shadow, consuming everything in its path. Villages emptied before their arrival. Smoke rose from burning farmhouses, whether from fear or Ottoman torches, no one knew. No force on earth could stand against them. No king, no fortress, no prayer. Suleiman rode at the front, his expression unreadable beneath simple dark steel armor. But his banner, a golden crescent against blood-red silk, blazed above all others. His generals rode beside him, hardened veterans carrying maps and intelligence reports, already counting towns promised to fall. As they pushed deeper into Central Europe, conditions worsened. Freezing rain hammered the columns. Rivers burst their banks. Supplies rotted in waterlogged carts. Even the mighty Ottoman machine began to bog down, choked by the same mud that had swallowed Hungary's defenders 3 years earlier. At night, soldiers built enormous fires along the Danube's edge. Their drums beat softly against the rain. Their prayers mixed with the howling wind. They were no longer just marching, they were surviving. In Vienna, news of the invasion hit like a lightning strike. Scouts brought reports of burned villages and demolished bridges. The city erupted into frantic activity. Citizens worked around the clock preparing for war. Walls were reinforced. Gates got iron plating. Moats were cleared and deepened. Barrels of gunpowder were positioned along the ramparts. Every man capable of holding a weapon was called to the walls. Inside the city, fear and faith battled for dominance in every soul. Churches overflowed with worshippers, so did the armories. Women and children hauled stones to the battlements. Priests walked the fortifications with raised crucifixes, blessing every cannon. Everyone understood what was coming, and they knew it would be unlike anything Europe had witnessed since the fall of Rome. Behind Vienna's walls, the city transformed into a fortress. No one knew exactly when the Ottomans would arrive, only that they were inevitable. The man in command was Count Nicholas von Salm, a battle-hardened general approaching 70. His face bore the scars of decades of warfare, but his mind remained sharp as Toledo steel. Fighting beside him stood Wilhelm von Rogendorf, another Habsburg campaign veteran. Together, they commanded barely 20,000 defenders, soldiers, townspeople, foreign volunteers, against an enemy 5 times their size. Vienna's fortifications were ancient, built long before the age of cannon warfare. So the people remade their city. Earth was dug from gardens and piled into new earthworks. Stone houses were demolished to reinforce vulnerable sections. Every church bell was melted down for bullets and cannonballs. Women carried dirt in baskets. Children dragged stones. Priests blessed the barricades. By early autumn, the city itself had become a living, breathing defender. Food was strictly rationed. Wells were purified and guarded. Every tower had its watchman. Every gate had its garrison. At night, citizens slept in their armor. They understood that once the siege began, no rescue would come. The nearest relief force was weeks away in Germany, and the roads would soon be severed by Ottoman scouts. Beyond the walls, the horizon glowed crimson where villages burned. Refugees flooded into Vienna, farmers, monks, peasants clutching whatever possessions they could carry. The gates finally slammed shut behind the last of them. From that moment forward, Vienna stood completely alone. Then one gray morning in late September, the hills came alive. The Ottoman vanguard crested the ridges, cavalry units with armor glittering like dragon scales in the pale light. Behind them came endless columns of infantry, siege weapons pulled by teams of oxen, banners rippling under a cold autumn wind. The air vibrated with the rhythm of their drums.